There are moments in your life when you think, okay, that's the worst it's ever going to get. And then, somehow, your family finds a way to outdo themselves. My name's Rowan. I'm 27, and I guess you could say I'm the designated black sheep of my family, though I've never really earned that title. It's not like I'm a criminal or anything. I work a regular job, I keep to myself, and I've never caused anyone trouble. But I didn't follow the path they laid out for me. The path paved in fake smiles, proper college degrees, and pretending our family didn't have skeletons bursting from every closet. That's the part they really couldn't forgive. I wasn't always the disappointment. In fact, when I was a kid, I was everyone's golden boy. Good grades, polite, a little shy, but well-behaved. My Aunt Gloria used to gush over me at every holiday. Rowan's going to be the first doctor in the family, she'd say, loud enough for my cousins to hear. You watch. And I believed her, because why wouldn't I? I didn't know at the time that their praise came with invisible strings that wrapped tighter the older I got, strings they expected me to pull just the way they liked. Things started to change around high school. I had a knack for writing and storytelling. I loved digging into messy characters and messy families and writing stories that made people feel something. I wanted to study literature. That's when the switch flipped. All the encouragement dried up overnight. My mom, who used to tape my report cards on the fridge, suddenly acted like my dream was a phase I'd grow out of. My older brother Nate, who always got away with everything, called me Emo Shakespeare and rolled his eyes anytime I talked about my goals. But it was Aunt Gloria who really let the mask slip. I still remember the dinner when she turned to my parents and said, right in front of me, "Are you really going to let him throw away all that potential?" That line stuck with me. Throw away. Like pursuing a life that didn't fit their expectations was the same thing as self-destruction. After that, everything I did was wrong in their eyes. I didn't get into med school, disgraceful. I moved out at 20 and took a writing job instead of staying under their roof, ungrateful. I skipped one Christmas because I couldn't afford the plane ticket, unforgivable. My absence was more offensive to them than Nate's DUI or my cousin Maddie's tabloid-worthy meltdown at her wedding, because at least they still played the game. I didn't. I think that's what really set them off. I stopped pretending. I stopped nodding along at family dinners and fake laughing at my uncle's racist jokes. I stopped coming around unless I absolutely had to. And the thing is, I was okay with that. I made peace with the distance. What I didn't expect was for them to turn my absence into a storyline, a new role for me in the twisted soap opera they called family, the lost cause, the one who failed, the embarrassment. That brings me to the reunion. The setup, the trap. I hadn't gone to a family reunion in over 5 years. The last one ended with Gloria cornering me and asking if I was still doing that silly writing thing, and Nate filming it while laughing his head off. After that, I was done. But this time they got clever. My younger cousin Ellie texted me about it a month ahead. She was one of the few people in the family I still spoke to, sweet, awkward, and always caught in the middle. "I think you should come this time," she said. "It's different now. I miss you. And I think Grandma really wants to see you." Grandma's health hadn't been great lately, and despite everything, I still loved her. So I caved. I showed up to the reunion at Maplewood Park on a warm Saturday afternoon, keeping my expectations low. Ellie greeted me with a nervous hug. The setup was classic: long folding tables, cheap plastic tablecloths, buffet trays of lukewarm casseroles, and a giant "Welcome home, family" banner hanging crookedly between two trees. Everyone else, they acted surprised to see me, like I was a ghost they hadn't expected to haunt the party. My mom hugged me like she was trying to win an Oscar, all teary-eyed and breathy, like we were some long-lost reunion special. Nate slapped me on the back a little too hard and said, "Wow, look who decided to show up." I smiled through it. I had prepared myself for snide comments. What I didn't know then, what I only began to suspect halfway through the afternoon, was that they had planned something big. It started with Aunt Gloria making her rounds, louder than usual. She wasn't just talking, she was announcing things. "You know, it's so wonderful that everyone's doing so well. Maddie's new promotion, Nate's business, even Ellie's going for her master's. Just amazing. It's so important to set a good example for the younger ones." She glanced at me with a sharp smile. Some of us could use one. People laughed. Not everyone. A few cousins looked uncomfortable, but the ones who mattered, the inner circle of the family, they laughed. I was used to it. I kept eating my lukewarm mac and cheese. Then Nate pulled out his phone and started filming people. Family memories, he said. Gotta get reactions. Genuine reactions. He pointed the camera at me and added, especially yours, man. You always had such expressive eyes. That's when the red flags really started flapping. I tried to leave early, but my mom practically begged me to stay. Just for another hour, she said. There's going to be a little presentation. It's a surprise. You'll want to see it. And against my better judgment, I stayed. I sat at the picnic table, sipping flat lemonade and watching my relatives buzz around like vultures waiting for something to die. Something was off. The energy shifted. People started whispering. Phones were being pulled out more often. And Aunt Gloria? She stood by the makeshift podium like she was about to accept an award. That's when I realized they weren't just being passive-aggressive. They were planning something. Something performative. Something public. I had no idea just how far they were willing to go. But when Gloria tapped the microphone and said, "Before we wrap up today, we wanted to take a moment to recognize someone very special. Someone who's taught us all a lesson in choices," I felt my stomach drop. Phones went up. My brother gave me a thumbs up. Ellie looked like she wanted to disappear. Gloria smiled that rehearsed politician smile. Some families have shining stars. Some have cautionary tales. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat there, still holding my half-empty plastic cup of lemonade, letting the words sink in. Cautionary tale. That was me. That was how they were framing this. Aunt Gloria's voice rang out through the tiny, rusted speakers, bouncing off trees and lawn chairs like a sermon, and I could see people glancing between me and her, smirking or feigning discomfort, but no one stopping her. No family is perfect, she continued, pretending to pace like she was giving some heartfelt TED Talk. We all make mistakes. But what matters is how we come together to acknowledge those mistakes, to learn from them. And today, I think it's important, essential, even, to be honest about where we've gone wrong. Where some of us have gone wrong. That's when she pointed at me. Not figuratively. She raised her hand, stretched out one perfectly manicured finger, and pointed. The laughter that followed wasn't loud. It was worse. It was restrained, knowing, almost smug. Nate was grinning like an idiot behind his phone camera, catching every moment. A few of my cousins were already filming too, clearly in on whatever this was. My mom sat next to Gloria, nodding sadly like she'd just witnessed a tragic accident. I should have walked away. I should have stood up, turned around, and left that cursed picnic table in the dust. But I didn't. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Or maybe it was the absolute disbelief that they'd go this far. Aunt Gloria clutched a stack of paper dramatically. In the spirit of growth, I took the liberty of compiling something. A little timeline of Rowan's journey. I think it's important to look back, to reflect, and to understand where things derailed. I froze. A timeline? She started reading, her voice syrupy with fake concern. Let's start with 2013. Rowan decides not to apply to any medical schools, despite years of his parents' support and encouragement. Instead, he begins writing short stories. On the internet. Laughter. 2015. Drops out of a reputable internship program because he doesn't feel inspired. Later that year, moves into a studio apartment with no central heating. More laughter. I scanned the crowd. Some people looked amused. Others, uncomfortable. Like they knew this was crossing a line but weren't brave enough to say it. I caught Ellie's eyes. She looked pale, horrified. Her phone stayed in her lap. 2017. Gloria continued, her tone brightening like she was reading a children's book. Rowan skips his sister's engagement party. No explanation. Oh wait, we later found out it was because he had a writing deadline. For a blog post. 2019. Loses job at local publishing firm. Spotted working part-time at a bookstore. Not even management. I wasn't even embarrassed anymore. I was furious. Not at the details, some of those were true, but at the glee in her voice. At the fact that everyone had sat around and planned this. They dug through years of my life like it was material for a roast, except I hadn't agreed to be the punchline. But Gloria wasn't done. She saved the real gut punch for last. And finally, 2021. Rowan stops speaking to most of the family, doesn't return calls, and doesn't even show up for Grandma's 80th birthday. But he did post a tweet about how family isn't about blood, it's about respect. Isn't that right, sweetheart? She turned to me, smiling like she expected applause. And for a moment, everything went dead quiet. The air itself held its breath. My mom was the one who broke the silence. She placed a hand over her chest, her voice trembling, and not in a good way. We tried, Rowan. We all tried. But you've pushed us away. You chose this path. And we just couldn't keep pretending anymore. That's when Nate stepped in front of me, phone camera still rolling. Say something, bro. You're always so articulate. Come on. Defend yourself. The fans are watching. He laughed, and a few others laughed too. Not because it was funny, but because cruelty is contagious. Because in that moment, I wasn't a person anymore. I was a target. A spectacle. A family-sanctioned scapegoat. I should have cracked. I should have broken down or lost my temper. But I didn't. Because as they gawked and sneered and waited for my reaction, something inside me snapped, but not in the way they expected. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. They thought they knew everything. Thought they had every piece of dirt, every misstep, every embarrassing moment. But what they didn't know, what they could never have guessed, was that I had spent the last 2 years learning everything they tried to hide. And I had receipts. Literal ones. Emails. Photos. Court records. Bank transfers. DMs. They had humiliated me for the last time. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't even going to explain myself. Instead, I reached into my bag, the same beat-up messenger bag they'd mocked me for bringing, and pulled out a blue folder. Thick. Organized. Tabs sticking out. I could feel Gloria's eyes twitch when she saw it. "What's that?" she asked, tone suddenly sharp. I didn't answer her. I stood up slowly and walked to the podium. Nate tried to block me for a second, but I looked him in the eye and whispered, "Don't." Something in my voice made him step back. For the first time that day, I felt them shift, just a little, from confidence to confusion. I stood behind the mic. My hands didn't shake. I opened the folder. "I wasn't planning to say anything today," I said, voice calm. "I thought I'd come, say hi to Grandma, be polite, and leave." But clearly, I underestimated just how desperate some people are to rewrite history. I glanced at Gloria. She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "So since we're being honest, let's really be honest. You want a timeline? Fine. I've got one of my own." I pulled out the first sheet. "Let's start with 2008. Gloria, you took $6,000 out of Grandma's account for a roof repair that never happened. Here's the bank statement and the contractor's receipt showing zero work was ever scheduled." Dead silence. Gloria stood up. "That's ridiculous." I raised a hand. "Let me finish." Next page. 2012. Nate, you totaled Dad's car, and Mom told the insurance company I was driving because you were already on probation. I was 17. That lie cost me my license and my first scholarship. Murmurs. Next page. 2016, Maddie's wedding. You remember that, right? You all accused me of skipping out because I was jealous. But I have an email from Maddie herself. Here, where she told her maid of honor she didn't want me there because I'd bring the mood down by being single and pathetic. Gasps. A few phones went down. A few people looked away. Next page. 2019, Gloria again. You convinced Grandma to co-sign on a second mortgage to help Nate with his business. The business went under 3 months later. Grandma's been paying $400 a month ever since. Gloria shouted, "That's not true." But even her voice cracked. She was sweating. Visibly. I paused. Let the silence stretch. 2021. The reason I missed Grandma's birthday wasn't because I was being selfish. It's because I was with her lawyer, helping her review her finances after she told me something wasn't adding up. We spent 4 hours going through every account, every credit card, every withdrawal. You want the receipts? I brought copies. My mom's face was white. Nate was no longer filming. Ellie stood up, no one noticed but me, and started quietly taking her own photos. She was shaking. I looked around. You wanted a show? You wanted to shame me in public? Fine. But you forgot one thing. I'm a writer. And unlike you, I don't bury the truth. I didn't even need to finish. The mood had shifted completely. The air had turned from smug to sick. People were whispering now, not about me, but about them. The golden children. The family royalty. The people who'd built their little empire on lies, favoritism, and manipulation. And I hadn't even gotten to the worst part yet. Because the final document in that folder, the one with the tab labeled estate, that was going to burn everything down. But I wasn't going to read it. Not yet. I closed the folder slowly. Looked directly at Aunt Gloria, who looked like she might faint. And just as I opened my mouth to speak again, Grandma stood up. She didn't move fast, but she moved with purpose, each step steady, each breath deliberate. The last time I'd seen her like that was at my high school graduation, before her knees gave out and before her voice started to tremble when she spoke. But today, she looked like someone who had just remembered they had a spine. She walked right up to Aunt Gloria, who was frozen in place, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Grandma didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I trusted you," she said. "And you lied to me." Just 5 words. But they hit harder than anything I'd said. Gloria blinked like she didn't understand English. "Mom, I only ever tried to help." Rowan twisted everything. "He's always been." Grandma raised her hand, silencing her like a judge slamming a gavel. "Don't you dare put this on him. I've seen the numbers. I've seen the checks. I know what you did." And with that, she turned and walked back to her seat. The moment didn't end in chaos like I thought it might. There were no dramatic screams or someone flipping over a table. Instead, what followed was worse. The total unraveling of their carefully maintained image, one awkward conversation at a time. Maddie slinked off to the edge of the lawn, fake smiling at anyone who looked her way. Nate disappeared altogether. I didn't even see him leave. And Gloria? She just sat down, stunned, muttering to herself. People avoided eye contact with me. Not out of shame, more like guilt. The kind that hits you when the curtains pulled back and the wizard's just some bitter old relative with an overinflated ego. But here's the thing. Even after all that, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt empty. I didn't eat. I didn't finish my drink. I didn't stay for the cleanup or the awkward apologies. I just packed up my folder, hugged Grandma, who held on to me longer than she ever had before, and left. By the time I got home that night, I felt like I'd been hollowed out and filled with cement. Heavy, stiff, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. That was rock bottom. Not the humiliation, not even the betrayal, but realizing that after all the fighting, all the exposing and truth-telling, I still felt like I had nothing. No peace, no closure, no family. For a while, I drifted. Woke up late, scrolled through old messages, ignored phone calls, most of them from relatives who didn't know what was going on, who wanted to clear the air. Some apologized with phrases like, "I wasn't part of it, but I still feel bad," as if that did anything. Others pretended to reach out for me, when it was clear they were just fishing for gossip. I didn't answer any of them. I couldn't. But I did answer Ellie. She sent me one text the morning after the reunion. That was brave. "I'm sorry for not saying something sooner." I replied, "You don't owe me anything. But thank you." She showed up at my door a few days later with coffee and a slice of peach pie from my favorite bakery. The kind of small, quiet gesture that said everything words couldn't. We didn't talk about the reunion right away. We just sat on the balcony, eating in silence while the sun came up. Eventually, she said, "You know, I always thought I was going to be the one who exploded. I wanted to, but I never could. I didn't have the guts." I shook my head. "You weren't weak. You were just surviving." She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "But you lived." That stuck with me. In the days that followed, I started writing again. Not for anyone else, not even for a paycheck. Just for me. It wasn't easy. My fingers hovered over the keys like they'd forgotten what to do. But slowly, the words came back. First in fragments, then in full pages. I didn't write about the reunion. I didn't need to. I wrote about characters who broke and rebuilt. About quiet rage and quieter resilience. About betrayal and found family and how sometimes you have to lose everything to figure out what actually matters. And something strange happened. People started noticing. I posted a short story anonymously to a small online magazine I used to read religiously. Just a little piece about a boy at a family dinner who brings the wrong casserole and ends up being the only honest person at the table. I didn't think anyone would care. It went viral. Not millions of views viral, but enough to get shared, reblogged, tweeted. Enough to make me feel seen. The editor reached out personally, asking if I had more. I didn't at the time, but I told her yes. I stayed up 3 nights in a row writing something new. Then something else. Within a month, she offered me a freelance column. I started calling it The Folded Chair, after the one I always got stuck with at reunions. Each piece was a little window into my thoughts, family dynamics, generational trauma, the stories we tell to keep ourselves sane. I never used real names. But the themes? They were personal, raw, honest. The column took off. Slowly, steadily. And so did everything else. A podcast asked to interview me. A book agent slid into my inbox. A local radio station wanted me to guest on a segment about redefining family. I didn't say yes to all of it, but I said yes to enough. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was building something. Something real. My apartment still had leaky pipes. My kitchen table still wobbled. But I had peace. I had purpose. And I had people who saw me, really saw me, without needing to manipulate, diminish, or redefine me. Even Grandma started calling more. We didn't talk about the fallout. We didn't have to. She just asked what I was working on and told me about the birds nesting outside her window. And I told her about a character I was writing, an old woman who finally takes her garden back from the weeds. One day, she laughed and said, "You always had a way with words. We just didn't know how to hear you." It wasn't an apology, but it was enough. Then came the day I got the letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just a name inside. From Nate. I almost didn't open it. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, made me read it anyway. It was short. Sloppy handwriting. A little defensive, but also confused. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Everyone's mad at me now. Gloria's not talking to me. Mom won't answer my calls. You burned everything down and just walked away. But part of me thinks you were right too. Part of me wonders if maybe we had it coming. I don't get it. But I'm trying. I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer and left it there. Because forgiveness, like healing, takes time. And I wasn't ready. But I was willing. That was the difference. More time passed. More articles published. A small publisher offered to turn my collected essays into a paperback release. I said yes, but only if I could write a new piece, the final chapter. I called it The Disappointment. In it, I wrote about the reunion. Not the facts, not the receipts, or the betrayal, or the folder. But the feeling. The moment you realize the people who raised you don't actually know you. And maybe never did. But I also wrote about rebuilding. About found family. About Ellie and coffee on balconies. About how sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destruction, it's thriving. And it ended with this. They call me the disappointment. But I've decided that's not a bad thing. Because disappointing people who wanted to keep you small is just another word for becoming yourself. I didn't go to the next reunion, but they sent me an invitation anyway. And this time, tucked inside the envelope, was a photo. A single, empty picnic table. My name written in careful cursive on a folded place card. And beneath it, a note. Reserved just in case. I stared at that photo for a long time. I didn't know if I'd ever sit at that table again. There's something eerie about silence when it comes from people who used to be loud. The calls stopped. The texts, even the passive-aggressive Facebook posts from Aunt Gloria, dried up. For the first time in years, it felt like the entire family just froze. Like a collective inhale they didn't know how to release. I wasn't naive. I knew it wasn't remorse. It was self-preservation. The fallout from the reunion had shaken them in a way they didn't expect. For people who built their identities around control, nothing was scarier than being exposed, especially by someone they considered disposable. But I didn't trust the quiet. I knew them too well, and I was right not to. About a month after my essay collection, The Disappointment, launched, I got a message from an old friend of mine from high school, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. His name was Devin, and we used to be close before life took us in different directions. His text was short. "Hey, just a heads up. Your brother Nate's been asking around about you. Weird questions. Might be nothing. Thought you should know." That pit in my stomach, the one I thought I'd finally silenced, came roaring back. I called Devin immediately. He picked up fast. "Yeah," he said, "no small talk. I saw him at a bar. He was talking to some guys we both knew, mutual friends, kind of, but it felt off. He kept asking if anyone knew where you were working now, if you were still writing that family tell-all crap, and whether you'd used any real names. He even asked if you'd ever recorded phone calls." My hand clenched the phone. "Did you tell him anything?" "Of course not," Devin said. "I told him to shove it." I thanked him, hung up, and sat in the dark for a long time, staring at the folder still tucked in the corner of my desk, the same one I'd carried to the reunion. I hadn't opened it since that day, but I hadn't thrown it away either. Part of me knew this wasn't over. Not really. You don't hurt people like that. People who rely on appearances more than oxygen, and expect them to walk away quietly. So I got ready. Not with rage. Not with some dramatic, impulsive act of vengeance. I'd learned my lesson there. This time, It had to be precise. It had to be slow. And it had to hurt where it mattered. Their legacy, their reputations, their money. It started with Gloria. A few years back, during the tail end of college, I'd interned at a local law office. Nothing glamorous, mostly filing, transcription, boring stuff. But I remembered something one of the senior attorneys told me once. If you ever want to ruin a person quietly, don't follow their voice. Follow their paperwork. So I started digging. Carefully, patiently, with no one to answer to but myself, and no timeline except my own. The public records system in our county is a mess. Outdated websites, paywalls, scanned PDFs that look like they were faxed through a potato. But if you know what to look for, you can find a lot. And I did. I pulled Gloria's old property deeds. Her LLC registration for that consulting company she bragged about. I found inconsistencies. Transfers that didn't make sense. Shell companies with addresses that traced back to P.O. boxes. Loans she co-signed with someone named Dale D. A name I recognized as her high school ex-boyfriend who mysteriously showed up in her life again 2 years ago, after a bankruptcy filing. On their own, none of this was illegal. But combined, it painted a very different picture of the respected community leader she played on Facebook. Then there was Nate. I already knew about the DUI. The insurance fraud Mom covered up. But now, with more time and a more methodical eye, I found something better or worse, depending on who you ask. Nate had started a financial coaching business. Let me clarify. Nate, who once thought a Roth IRA was a martial art, was now selling online courses teaching people how to build passive income through real estate. His website was slick. His Instagram was full of staged luxury, leased cars, Airbnb rentals he didn't own, screenshots of bank statements with the names cropped out. It screamed scam. But people were eating it up. Until I started reading the reviews. At least 6 people, real names, real receipts, had posted about getting ghosted after paying for his premium mentorship program. Promised Zoom calls never happened. Course materials were PDF downloads copied from Reddit posts. No refund policy, no customer support, just a Gmail address that bounced half the time. And then I found the smoking gun. A PayPal claim filed by a woman named Teresa who had paid $3,000 for one-on-one coaching. She never heard from him again. Her complaint included screenshots of their conversation, his full name, his phone number, and one damning quote. "Don't worry, my brother's a writer. He taught me how to make stuff look legit." I stared at that line for a long time. He was using me to sell lies. That was when I decided this wouldn't just be about personal revenge anymore. It would be surgical. I didn't go to a lawyer. Not yet. I didn't call a journalist. I didn't post any of it online. Instead, I went to someone better. Ellie. Because while I'd been rebuilding, she'd been watching. Turns out, she'd started recording things after the reunion. Not on purpose, at first, but out of anxiety. She'd been so shaken by how easily our family could rewrite reality that she started documenting everything. Phone calls with Gloria. Voicemails from Nate. Conversations with her parents where they admitted things, ugly things, thinking she'd never use it against them. She sent me a folder labeled, "For you if you ever need it." Inside, gold. One audio file in particular stood out. A conversation between Gloria and Nate, muffled, but clear enough. "Gloria, he humiliated us. If he wants to drag this family through the mud, then fine. Let's give him something real to cry about. Nate, relax. We just need to plan a story. Make it look like he's been stealing ideas, or whatever. Say he's mentally unstable. Isn't that what Mom used to tell people?" Gloria laughs, "Perfect. Let's make him the villain in his own memoir." I stared at my screen. My hands didn't shake. Because I finally knew what I was going to do. I spent the next 2 weeks crafting a dossier. Organized. Clean. No embellishments. Just evidence. I called it the rewrite. Because that's what they had always done, tried to rewrite my story. But now, I had the pen. I assembled everything. Gloria's shady business filings, Nate's coaching scam victims, the audio recordings, the timeline of family manipulation, even copies of financial statements they thought I'd never find. But here's the thing about revenge. It only works if you hit them where it really hurts. Gloria loved her local reputation more than anything. She'd built her identity around it. Community awards, fundraising galas, speaking at the Rotary Club. If her closet full of secrets ever got aired publicly, she'd be done. Nate? He worshipped status, clout, followers. His fragile empire depended on the illusion of success. One crack, and the whole thing would collapse. So I crafted 2 packages. One for the IRS, the other for a mid-sized investigative podcast that had a reputation for uncovering small-town corruption. Their host, a woman named Cassidy, had covered scandals like this before. People who weaponized family names to build fake businesses, exploit the vulnerable, and walk away clean. I sent her a sample. Within 48 hours, she replied, "Rowan, I read your materials. I don't say this lightly. This could be huge. I'd like to interview you, on or off the record. Up to you. Let me know." I told her I needed time, because this wasn't just about burning it all down anymore. It was about rebuilding on my terms. The interview was set for 2 weeks out. That gave me time. Time to finish the rewrite. Time to finalize the names, the facts, the documentation. Time to choose what I wanted the world to know and what I wanted to keep for myself. But most importantly, time to make a decision. Whether I was going to press the final button. Whether I was going to turn this quiet rebuild into a reckoning. And as I stared at that RSVP card for the next reunion, the one with the empty picnic table and the folded name card with my name on it, I realized something. They had offered me a seat. But what they didn't know, I was bringing the whole table with me. I didn't respond to the reunion invitation right away. I let it sit on my desk, propped open next to my coffee mug like some kind of ironic souvenir. It stared back at me for days, that empty table with the folded name card, Rowan, written in careful cursive. Maybe they thought it was an olive branch. Or maybe it was bait. But the message was clear. They hadn't forgotten what I did, and they didn't think I'd forgotten either. They were right. But I wasn't coming back to play their game. I was coming to end it. Cassidy, the podcast host, scheduled the interview for the Monday after the reunion. That was intentional on my part. If anything went wrong, if they somehow sniffed out what I was planning, I wanted to make sure the world still heard the story. But if it went right, then the interview would just be the funeral procession after the fire. 2 days before the reunion, I met Cassidy in person. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe downtown. She was sharp, focused, the kind of woman who asked questions that cut through the noise. She brought a small recorder, set it gently on the table, and asked, "You sure you want to do this, Rowan? Once this goes live, there's no turning back." I nodded. They made me a cautionary tale. I think it's time I returned the favor. I handed her a flash drive labeled The Rewrite. She smiled, like she already knew how the story would end. The day of the reunion came, and I arrived late on purpose. The picnic setup was the same. Long tables, overcooked food, a cheap banner flapping in the breeze. But this time, the energy was off. Tense. Stiff. People saw me and stopped talking. I felt their eyes on my back as I made my way to the reserved seat at the end of one table. My place card was still there, but someone had flipped it upside down. Subtle. Ellie appeared at my side a few minutes later, slipping into the seat next to me like nothing had happened. She handed me a coffee from my favorite cafe, black, no sugar, exactly how I liked it. "You ready?" she asked. Been ready. And I had. For weeks. Months, really. Ever since the first time they turned my life into a joke. Gloria stood at the head of the picnic area like usual, giving a forced speech about unity and learning from our mistakes. Nate hovered nearby, dressed like a tech bro who lost his crypto portfolio, arms folded, sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. My mom was quieter than usual, her eyes darting around like she was expecting someone to jump out from the bushes with a subpoena. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know what. After the speeches and the bad barbecue, the mic was passed around for family updates. Maddie bragged about a trip to Greece. Someone mentioned a new baby. And then, as if reading from a script, Gloria clapped her hands and said, "Rowan? Anything to share?" All eyes turned to me. I stood slowly. No folder this time. No stack of papers. Just me and my voice. "I do," I said, stepping toward the center of the lawn. "I've been working on something." Murmurs. "I've been documenting our family's history. Not the version you hear at these reunions, the real version. The one with missing money, buried secrets, and people who were told to stay quiet or go away." A beat of silence. Nate snorted. "Here we go again." I ignored him. "Some of you already know what I'm talking about. Some of you helped. And some of you looked the other way. But the truth has a funny way of catching up. And now," I pulled out my phone. "It's caught up." I tapped the screen. 10 seconds later, every phone in the vicinity buzzed at once. Text messages. emails, notifications, all triggered by a timed release I'd programmed earlier that morning. A link to the rewrite, uploaded to a private blog, mirrored across 3 backup sites, and sent to over a dozen local reporters, including the board of the community center where Gloria served as treasurer. Ellie leaned back in her seat, sipping her coffee like it was just another Sunday. Phones started lighting up. Gloria's first, then Maddie's, then my mom's. One by one, people read, and the color drained from their faces. The documents, the receipts, the audio, all of it, laid bare. Turn that off, Gloria barked at someone. It's fake. It's all fabricated. It's not, Ellie said calmly. I recorded you myself. Gloria whirled on her. You little. Careful, Ellie said, standing. There's more where that came from. Aunt Gloria tried to regain control. She waved her arms, shouted something about defamation and lawyers, but no one was listening anymore. Because the emails were out. The stolen funds. The fake businesses. The proof that Nate had defrauded clients under his brother's name. Even screenshots of group chats. Yes, I'd seen those too, where they'd laughed about humiliating Rowan and making him cry on camera. Every lie, every secret they'd clung to like armor, was now brittle glass, shattered in front of the whole family. Nate tried to puff up, probably to scare me, but no one was behind him this time. Maddie was backing away. My mom looked like she might faint. And Grandma? Grandma stood. Again, 2 reunions. 2 moments of absolute clarity. I've seen enough, she said. Her voice was calm but firm, louder than it had any right to be. I may be old, but I'm not blind. And I won't sit here and let you ruin this family anymore. She turned to Gloria. I want your keys. To my house. To the account. All of it. Gloria stammered. You can't. Mom, you don't understand. I do understand. Finally. Then she turned to Nate. And you're a disgrace. He scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and stormed off. No one followed. Not even Mom. My mother, who had stayed silent through everything, finally stood up. Not to defend him. Not to scold me. She just looked at me with tired eyes and said, I don't know who I raised. I looked back at her. Neither do I. She sat down again. The reunion ended in record time after that. People gathered their things quietly. Some came up to shake my hand. Some avoided me entirely. A few, including cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, said thank you. Ellie stayed behind to help Grandma pack up. I walked with them to her car. We didn't talk about what happened. We didn't need to. The next day, Cassidy's podcast went live. It wasn't just a hit. It exploded. The episode, titled The Rewrite, When Families Go Too Far, climbed to the top of the charts within a week. Listeners were outraged, fascinated, heartbroken. I was flooded with messages from strangers who'd lived through their own family betrayals. People thanked me for speaking up, for surviving, for documenting. Within 2 months, Gloria stepped down from every community board she was part of. Nate's website disappeared. His Instagram went private. A small claims lawsuit was filed against him by one of his clients. Maddie tried to spin it, calling it creative nonfiction, but her boss didn't buy it. She lost her PR job. My mother stopped sending birthday cards. And me? I got a book deal. Not just for the disappointment, but for a second book, The Rewrite in Full. An expose, a memoir, a roadmap for anyone who's ever been told to sit down and smile while the family burns everything behind them. I dedicated it to Ellie. And to Grandma. One last thing. A few months later, I got another letter. This time, from a cousin I barely remembered. A simple note. Thank you. You gave the rest of us permission to stop pretending. That's the thing about truth. Once it's out, it doesn't go back in the box. And me? I'm not the disappointment. I'm the reminder that even when they try to rewrite your story, you can always write the ending yourself. And I just did.